You see the word crisis in the title of our presentation. It is a word we don't take lightly. America has endured many crises over the years. According to the Harvard Business School textbook on crisis management, a crisis is a change, either sudden or evolving, that results in an urgent problem that must be addressed immediately. For most of us, the thought of a crisis conjures up images of fear, loss, and regret. Although we all face them at one point or another, crises have a way of sneaking up on us. We rarely see them coming, and we seldom have an opportunity to plan for them. In 1918, as World War I came to a close, America faced a medical crisis that eventually claimed more lives than the war itself. This new enemy, called the Spanish Doomsday Flu, killed more than 25 million people worldwide, including more Americans than were killed in the Civil War. Surprisingly unknown today, this flu was one of the worst epidemics in world history, with at one point 100,000 Americans dying each month. In 2004, we faced the greatest barrage of hurricanes this generation has ever seen. Charlie, Francis, Ivan, and Jean caused more than $1.2 billion in damage and left more than 40 million cubic feet of debris in their wake. As terrifying as these catastrophes were, America faces another ominous crisis. This looming crisis will not blow through like a hurricane, and probably will impact more people and last longer than any other American crisis. Our impending crisis, however, is not medical or weather-related. The coming threat is our growing retirement crisis. According to the Harvard Generations Policy Journal, the aging of America's baby boomers is the most pressing national issue of the century. In the past, Americans' worst nightmare about retirement was not reaching it. They nervously asked, "What if I die before I retire, before I can enjoy my golden years?" But with rising longevity, along with astounding leaps in expenses, a more troubling question looms. But what if I live? What if I live another 20, 30, or even 50 years after I retire? What if my body holds out, but my portfolio doesn't? No one can remove risk from life or retirement, but you can educate yourself and prepare. This presentation may help you by examining the 7 key challenges creating the American retirement crisis and providing you with perspectives from investors and experienced financial advisors. The first challenge is longevity. During the last century, our life expectancy has almost doubled. People are now living longer and retiring earlier, so retirees face the real prospect of outliving their savings. The average person can expect to live 19 or more years in retirement. Not only are people living longer, but the proportion of our older population in this country is growing dramatically. Every 12 seconds, an American turns 65. The 80-plus population is growing 5 times faster than the general population. By 2030, the demographics of 32 states will resemble those of Florida today. How will Americans deal with the dramatic increase in retirement years?
My mother had a heart attack 3 years ago. In a half-hour operation, they put a stent in her heart and sent her home 3 days later. That same heart attack 10 years earlier would have killed her.
My family is known for heart attacks, and I don't think, I've only had one of my dad's people get up, or 2 of them get up past 70. And I think with my retirement system and everything that I'll have enough.
The second challenge facing retirees is the decline of the traditional pension. About 34 million Americans are covered by pension plans, and the number of these plans is dropping each year. We've gone from over 100,000 plans in 1985 to fewer than 30,000 in 2003, and even those pensions that have survived may still be threatened. If you've read the headlines, you know that more and more pensions are at risk. companies that continue to offer pensions are collectively underfunded by $450 billion. On top of that, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, the governmental fund that insures pensions, ran a deficit of $23 billion in 2004.
I'm greatly concerned about my pension being there at the time of my retirement due to the fact my company is thinking or looking into terminating the plan. And if it's turned over to the Pension Guaranty Corporation, I will receive about 25% of what I would otherwise receive. I retired just over 5 years, a mandatory age 60 retirement, and we've been basing all of our plans for the last 20 years on that fund being there, and now we're told 5 years before retirement it's a good chance it won't be there. We don't know what kind of replacement, if any, will be there. So it greatly changes the amount of income we need to come up with to replace it.
The third challenge facing retirees is Social Security. Social Security has a fundamental problem. It was originally intended to provide only supplemental retirement income for a minority of Americans. Instead, it has become the primary retirement income source for a majority of retired Americans. 65% of retirees rely on Social Security for 50% or more of their income. 33% rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their income. In 1945, there were some 42 contributors to Social Security for every benefactor of it. By 2002, that ratio had dropped to 3.3 to 1, and it continues to fall. This growing disparity of beneficiaries to contributors is at the heart of the problem with Social Security. The program will begin paying out more than it takes in as early as 2018. And by 2042, Social Security benefits may run out altogether.
By the year 2042, the entire fund will be completely exhausted. It pretty much makes it a non-factor in the retirement planning process. Current retirees, it's a different ballgame. Then we do have to work towards how do we preserve the majority of it without having any of it taxed.
Social Security is not going to be there by the time I would need it. So, and of course you keep hearing it, but I'm afraid Social Security won't be there by the time I retire.
The fourth challenge to a secure retirement is taxation. Taxes represent the average household's single largest monthly expense, accounting for 30% of your monthly income, twice as much as the next closest expense. And the tax burden for upper income taxpayers has been escalating significantly over the years. Consider this: the top 10% of income earners in 1981 were responsible for about 48% of all federal income taxes. In 1991, that percentage had grown to 56%. By 2001, the top 10% of income earners paid 65% of the nation's tax burden. And who knows what that percentage will be in 2011? So what does the future hold? Well, there's good news and bad news. Here's the good news. The government has recently increased the tax burden on the rich. The bad news: you're rich. You might not consider yourself rich, but the IRS does. If you earned more than $56,085, you're in the top 25% of all American taxpayers.
I think they're normally surprised. If they go to their accountant, they get their taxes back, they see what their tax bill is, they hope they get a refund. They may owe, depending on whatever the situation is. I think when you quantify it and you tell them how much is going to taxes, yeah, they are surprised. They may hear it from their accountant, but I think it goes in and then goes right back out.
I never realized until I got to so-called retirement age that the taxes were very much a part of our lives. I mean, I always paid our taxes. My husband and I both did. But I never realized that they just keep going up and up and up and up. And I don't know what to do about it.
The fifth challenge to a secure retirement is inflation, what some call the invisible enemy. Inflation can significantly erode your future spending power. For example, assuming you have $10,000 at just a 3% inflation rate, the spending power of your $10,000 is reduced by 25% after 10 years and cut nearly in half after 20 years. This 3% average historical inflation rate dates back to 1926. However, inflation was dramatically higher as recently as the 70s and 80s. Now, let's look at inflation in a different way: the impact it has on your income needs. If you need $50,000 a year to live on today, assuming a 3% inflation rate, you'll need over $65,000 in 10 years, and nearly double that amount in 25 years just to maintain the same lifestyle.
We don't see people coming in overly concerned about inflation, and sometimes we point out to them the fact that even with just 3% inflation, when you look at what that does to your purchasing power over 20 years, it's pretty dramatic. So I don't think they come in where it's, nobody is ever put down, by the way, and when we ask them for their three biggest concerns in retirement, I've yet to see anybody write down inflation.
I remember when I bought a Mustang for $2,500, and I just bought a new car now, and it cost me 10 times as much. So inflation really affects me.
The sixth retirement challenge is healthcare. In an Employee Benefit Research Institute survey, healthcare ranks ahead of the economy, the war, the budget deficit, education, and taxes as the most critical national issue. And it ranks evenly with terrorism and national security as America's top concern. And there's good reason for this, as healthcare costs have skyrocketed. Just between 1980 and 2003, there was a quintupling of annual per capita healthcare expenditures, and that's projected to continue. A study by the EBRI estimates that the average American may need almost $300,000 just to pay for Medicare premiums in retirement. That's more money than the typical household has saved altogether.
I walked into Home Depot to buy a lawnmower, and I had a stroke. She had to have an operation on her back, $38,000. You never know when it's going to happen. She didn't know she was going to hurt her back. She hurt her back. I've had 6 operations since I retired from the Army. I had one in the whole 30 years almost that I was in the Army. You don't know what's going to happen.
It is a huge area of concern for them because the costs just keep going up and up, and so they're really getting strapped. We had a particular couple down in the Springs, Colorado Springs, who are in their mid to late 60s spending $1,000 a month out of pocket for prescription drugs out of a budget of about $3,500 a month. And that is a huge concern because they have just watched their dollars erode because of this problem, and they can't stop taking the medicine, so it's a real problem.
The final challenge is investor error. Research in this area shows that what people think and understand about investing is not nearly as important as what they do. And unfortunately, they do some very detrimental things with their finances. Consider the following. 59% of workers don't have a retirement account. 60% of adults have saved less than $10,000. 90% of investors don't even have a financial plan. And there's evidence that those who have managed to accumulate a portfolio have experienced disappointing results. According to Dalbar Incorporated, a firm conducting investor research for over 25 years, from 1984 until 2003, the S&P 500 experienced an average annual return of nearly 13%, while the average equity fund investor underperformed that return by nearly double digits.
I am sad to say that this is all Greek to me. Investing is all Greek to me.
Virtually every client that I sit down with has not ever gotten any assistance in understanding the funds that are in their 401k, and they pick them. I have had clients tell me they flip a coin over which fund to choose.
These challenges and problems have created the American retirement crisis. Many pre-retirees are overborrowed, undersaved, and unprepared for retirement, and may be wondering how to salvage their golden years. Good news, there's hope. You don't have to solve this problem on your own. The single most important message from this presentation is that you may need the services of a financial professional.